This is The Huddle. I'm Ethan Diamandas. He is Jon Anik. We are breaking down now the UFC 310 co-main event, the people's main event, as I might call it. Welterweight title eliminator between two undefeated fighters, Shavkat Rakhmonov and Ian Machado Garry. John, Shavkat is minus 400 at some books, Garry at plus 300. We've talked, at length about both these talented fighters. I want you to help me understand maybe why the public is either so bullish on Shavkat or, underestimating Ian Machado Garry.
Well, I think there is some underestimation going on when it comes to Ian Machado Garry. He is 8-0 in the UFC against 6-0 for Shavkat Rakhmonov. Machado Garry has fought the stronger schedule, in my opinion. Michael Venom Page is not only a hard striker to beat, but he's a hard striker to look good against. And Ian Machado Garry was able to dominate that fight. He can also lay claim to a win over Jeff Neal. Of course, Shavkat Rakhmonov was able to finish Jeff Neal. But I think Machado Garry is the faster, slicker, more precise striker. I think it's borderline crazy to see plus 300 next to his name. But he's fighting a guy in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Shavkat Rakhmonov, who, as you know, Ethan, is 18-0 with 18 finishes. He has knockout power. He has spinning attacks. He uses all of his limbs effectively, and he is an outstanding grappler and submission artist. So Machado Garry's takedown defense is going to be tested. I think a lot of my contemporaries feel like the simplistic handicap is Rakhmonov by submission, and he's got 25 minutes to find one. But Shavkat Rakhmonov is running into a striker in Ian Machado Garry that is as good as anyone he has faced with respect to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and just a machine, I think, cardiovascularly and otherwise, that he is not getting the credit for being from the fan base. So I do feel like Ian Machado Garry is sort of misunderstood. He's married to the game. His commitment is next level. He goes all over creation looking for different looks. And I also think Machado Garry is a guy who, that even though maybe the fans don't like a lot of things that have preceded this fight, they're going to respect him win or lose after what we see at UFC 310.
Yeah, no doubt. And that Michael Venom Page, not only was he able to stare him down and size him up, he was able to control, large amounts of the fight on the ground. Garry, of course, switched to training in Brazil at Chuta Box. Have you seen his grappling evolve as he's gotten more experience under the UFC lights?
Well, he was with Damian Maia for a while, and then Charles do Bronx Oliveira, the Shootbox Academy, Diego Lima sort of putting all of that together. And then Ian Machado Garry for this camp, in part in Thailand, finishing up the training camp in England. He has been a nomad at times. He's established roots, though, in Brazil. I did think in terms of his ground control, you saw some gains in the Michael Venom Page fight, but that's not the fight in which you're really going to assess Ian Machado Garry. It's this fight against a guy who, in theory, is going to be taking him down or trying to do so in Shavkat Rakhmonov. So I don't really know. I mean, you could see Ian Garry going through his progressions, trying to find a submission against Michael Venom Page. He was disappointed that he didn't find a choke. And you saw immediately after that fight, he was soliciting advice from Damian Maia and Charles Oliveira. If his skills as a grappler have even gotten close to aligning with his willingness and desire to improve, then I think it stands to reason that he'll be worlds better. But I just don't know. And I'm not going to judge too much based upon fighting one of the division's best strikers in Michael Venom Page. But you can be sure, however abbreviated a training camp this was for Ian Machado Garry, who, by the way, was supposed to fight Joaquin Buckley December 14th. They have done their work, and they have the right coaches and training partner to put themselves in position to succeed. You just can't necessarily simulate Shavkat and how he feels in training.
How surprised are you that Shavkat would accept a title or would accept a fight like this? Because a loss would presumably take him out of the title shot when Belal Muhammad is ready to go.
It's crazy to think that Shavkat Rakhmonov had earned a shot at the undisputed title and then is taking this fight without an interim belt on the line. And I can only assume that he had his contract ripped up, Ethan, and they gave him a new contract, right, which made it worth his while. I also think it speaks to his confidence. I also think it speaks to the fact that Shavkat Rakhmonov hasn't been able to make the walk all that often, right? He's only fought one time since UFC 285. Same can be said for John Jones. I know that changes this weekend at UFC 310, but I think Shavkat Rakhmonov wanted to fight. And you're going to have to probably fight Ian Machado Garry at some point in time. Why not try to pluck him off right now before he accrues more training repetitions with Charles do Bronx Oliveira and Damian Maia and everybody else in Brazil? So even though neither guy was preparing for this type of stylist, I think Rakhmonov saw some value in getting Machado Garry now as opposed to 2 years down the line. But I think both athletes deserve credit for stepping up for the UFC. But Rakhmonov in particular, to have a guaranteed title shot on paper and to step aside and face as lethal a striker as there is in this division and a guy who you have training camp repetitions against, I think Rakhmonov deserves a lot of credit. Hopefully he got a bump in pay.